Yeah, until we know what we're doing, until we have a really good story to tell, a really good project in our hands, it's really hard for us to move forward at all. It's hard to find funding, it's hard to find partners until we know what we're doing.
So just the idea of the citizens, so they know that maybe you're considering that, the county may be considering that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty good.
Any more questions?
Okay, thank you all very much.
Number 7C, jail overcrowding, public comment. Receive public comment on matters related to overcrowding issues at the Potter County Detention Center and take any action necessary pursuant to discussion. Claudia Stravato and Jada Queen are here to speak on that, so.
Thank you. Over half of the inmates in your jail have never had a trial, and never been determined to be guilty or innocent. And the far majority of these inmates awaiting trial could not post bail because they did not have the money to do so. Over half. Should we conclude that Potter County does not believe that a citizen is innocent until proven guilty? Should we conclude that Potter County believes that poverty is a crime? We can conclude that Potter County is not complying with the Constitution based on the Harris County case, O'Donnell v. Harris County. Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to speak before you today. The subject of my remarks are about pretrial detention and bail reform as they relate to the county's current problem of jail overcrowding. I am a citizen of Potter County, an instructor of political science at fairness and in the U.S. Constitution. You and all the judges in Potter County received a hand-delivered packet of materials in late July that included the results of research on these two subjects and also included information about the Harris County lawsuit that resulted in an order to release all misdemeanor inmates. We are here asking that you appoint a broad-based committee, much like the one that you used for public defenders, to study these two issues which in fact contribute to your overcrowded jail conditions. While you have appointed a committee to work on how to manage the results of overcrowding, the tail end of the problem, like transferring inmates to regional county jails, which takes them away from their families, and to consider hiring an architect to build on the current jail, that committee is not dealing with the front end issues which are causing the problem. I ask you again, is being poor a crime? If it isn't, then why do we let an alleged offender out of jail if he has money to post bail? I have been asked why I'm involved in this issue since it does not affect me personally. I've also been asked why am I wasting your time and mine by engaging in this matter. I've been asked why I even care about the issue. Well, I believe, as Martin Luther King said from his cell in the Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. First, I'm a civil libertarian. a longtime member of the American Civil Liberties Union and former president of the High Plains chapter of the Texas Civil Liberties Union for 10 years. Second, a liberal criminal defense lawyer for 47 years who constantly fought for the rights of the accused, the majority of whom were poor. Third, the textbooks on Texas state and local government all point out that pretrial detention and bail are the worst aspects of the Texas criminal justice system. This is a broadly recognized problem. It's not just y'all's. Last, an article in the ACLU magazine in 2023, which you were provided in the packet, pointed out that nationwide 74% of inmates in county jails had never had a trial, resulting in jail overcrowding and inhumane conditions, not to mention the destruction of families. I was spurred to action by this article. I then requested inmate numbers from Potter, Randall, and Lubbock counties. Potter responded quickly, even though they did not monitor data on inmates awaiting trial. One of the forms I gave you is Randall's printout, and it's exactly like Lubbock's, and they monitor pretrial inmates that are awaiting trial. I had asked for the total number of inmates versus the number of inmates awaiting trial. Randall took 9 months to provide the information, even though they kept the data that clearly identified those awaiting by category. Lubbock furnished the data in a timely manner because they too maintain the data reflecting those awaiting trial. However, both about the bail procedure since he sets the bonds for misdemeanors for Potter County. He also allowed me to sit with him on one occasion as he held preliminary hearings on Zoom for those arrested on misdemeanors. Also during this period, I did research under the direction of Dr. Brandon Bain, the program director for the Criminal Justice Department at WT. I found that all the fears associated with releasing inmates on personal recognizance bonds rather than money bail were unfounded. And my associate in this project, Jackie Payne, will give you that information in just a moment. Whether it is fear the accused will not return for trial or that they commit more crimes while awaiting trial were simply not founded. You were provided with this search, and I don't know whether you read it or not. We have done due diligence, and I'm asking Potter County to do the same. Inmates are human beings with jobs and families who love and depend on deserve to be provided the same privileges and immunity. Harris County charged TDCJ the daily inmate awaiting transfer. There are those serving their misdemeanor same fee. There's delayed periods to timely charge an inmate with the for in a week. Is the other cause of overcrowding. In addition to that the accused returned for trial. It is not for punishment. The materials we presented to you gave guidance on how to develop this tool and gave examples. A committee could develop this tool and develop guidelines regarding whom to release based on this tool. Travis County did this, and you have an article about it in that packet. It would be outrageous and callous for Potter County to go on with business as usual when it comes to unconstitutional pretrial detention and bail. It would be even more economically outrageous to start building an expensive addition to the jail. Payne will now come and give about 2.5.
Goes hand in hand with jail overcrowding. Until such time as Potter County addresses the front-end issue, it cannot make major changes positive results. Its county bail system in 5 years. Misdemeanor cases dismissed, or those which misdemeanor defendants detained pre-trial filed %. So let's focus on two commonly cited reasons for cash bail. One is to guarantee a court appearance, and two is to reduce the likelihood by 5%. Here, 90 days or 1 year remained unchanged following the Harris County reforms. This action reduces the chances of pretrial rearrest. $6.6 million per year. $33 million over a 5-year period by implementing changes on the front end. Committee established timeframes. Again, a comprehensive plan that will ultimately benefit all of Potter County residents. millions of dollars for our taxpayers, protect individuals and families, yet uphold the justice and community safety. Thank you, Jackie Payne.
Thank you. Is there anybody here that would like to make a
I would like to I'll tell you 20 years as a prosecutor and the everyday experience of doing that job in Kingston. I'll tell you, recidivism is a big problem. I'm not saying we can't do better in the county, but the idea that Houston and Austin, the two deepest blue areas in our state right now, have the solution that fits Amarillo, I don't buy it. Right? I want a safe community. I want personal responsibility involved for those folks. When you have no skin in the game, a personal recognizance bond, what do you have? That's an incentive. Committed conduct that violates the law. They can't follow the rules to start with, and you say, please promise to come back. And some of them do, right? That does happen. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I'll tell you. People, and on the misdemeanor side, more people stay in jail. But today, the most recent numbers I have from the sheriff, there are only 35 misdemeanors in our jail, and they're not going to stay there long. So we've already been ahead of the curve. Potter County has gotten to the point where those folks that don't need to be detained pre-trial, that there's not a safety concern with the community, or we have real fiscal, issues that we have to face, right? And we don't want to put people in jail that don't need to be in jail. And we've already gotten ahead of that. If you look at the numbers from now and from 20 years ago, I'll suggest to you, you're going to find that there are a whole lot fewer misdemeanors in our jail, and that's good. It's as it should be. Right? We've already gotten there. We're ahead of the curve on that. But the idea that taking someone and giving them a pretrial release on a promise to return, there's never a good day to come back and face the music and potentially go to TDC. So I'm not saying we can't do better. I'm not saying there's not room for conversation. I believe there's always that. We can always do better at what we do. But the idea that we're not doing better already is significantly misleading in my opinion. We're not Houston, we're not Austin, we're not San Antonio. But we have been working hard, and I know the court has too. Our judges, with the CSRP program, that court supervisor release program, that's essentially a PR bond program that's administered by probation. So at least we know if that person doesn't report. There's only so much we can do. And once again, it's a personnel issue. Right? Now, you can throw money at it, but I would sure suggest that we don't become New York or Austin or Houston and just let people out of jail on a PR bond. There are ways to get that done, and we've been doing it. Right? We've had significant change. Amount of crime. Our office reviews about 4,000 felony cases a year, and that's just what makes it through to us. That's not just what gets weeded out with the police department. So I would say that there's absolutely room for conversation, but the idea that we're unconstitutionally detaining people is not true. You need to have some skin in the game, right? That's why we have bondsmen. That's why that's been there for so long. People need to have some responsibility. And if I'm the guy that's going to have to come back and answer that, there are people that do show up that are PR. I won't say they're not, but I would say that those people are the exception rather than the rule. Right? So what we need to do is be careful. We need to look at things. We need to assess all the information we've heard here today. I've read what was provided to me.
Speak for our office, that we talked here, but I just did reach out to our frontline prosecutor for misdemeanor misdemeanors and asked, did people on PR bond show up for trial? And his answer was generally no. They are released, they are given a PR bond, they don't show up, and then they have to forfeit the bond. So our office is not having that experience where people are showing up. Furthermore, I just pulled up the jail numbers. I know what the sheriff has was from yesterday, but I pulled up the jail numbers on Spielman just now. Pretrial misdemeanors and convicted misdemeanors right now are 7% of the jail population. So the misdemeanors are not the problems at the jail, and our office works very hard to get the people out. And one thing our office also does, and Judge, you know, I handle the mental health cases for Potter County. I am in good communication with the prosecutors in our office and jail staff that if we have a person who is misdemeanor charge only but has mental health issues, isn't going to be able to go to jail, we work to get that person out of the jail so that they are not taken up a bed there. So our office is working very hard to deal with the misdemeanor issues.
Thank you.
Sure.
I did the same thing, we just got our list this morning. Our misdemeanors are not our problem. We have a total of 38 pretrial misdemeanors and 4 convicted misdemeanors. I can't go into what those charges are, but I also have a list of all of them. Of course, the felonies are the majority.
How many of you folks are in the jail now?
610 got down.
And we
Take
have,
those out of there.
how many misdemeanors out of that 600? Again,
38, most of them. 42.
I think we're working pretty hard. at
Collins,
getting
we
those
have 502, 82%. I had my crime analysis study look this up last night, spent all night working on this. There are 45 people in jail for murder, 9 of them for capital murder. So those are all our felonies. It's not the misdemeanors that are causing our problems. And I'm not saying that the DA's office isn't working. They're working their tails off to get these people through the court system. But the misdemeanors are not the problem. And you guys hear that every week when we bring you the numbers. So I respectfully disagree with the problem that we're having, that we're having. Do we have an overcrowding problem? Yes, we do, but it's misdemeanor, or it's felony crimes that are happening. It's not misdemeanors.
Judge, did you want to say something?
I would, thank you. Here's the headline from Harris County I wanted to make sure you're aware of. Over 150 killed in Harris County by suspects out on bond. I don't want to be Harris County. I don't have anything to do with it. If you look at any of the headlines, that's where all the problems are coming from. The other headline that if we still had a newspaper you could look at is Amarillo man kills his wife, 2 kids, then he kills himself. And if you were able to look at that story this morning, you found out that man had a misdemeanor hold on him. He was on bond for a misdemeanor domestic violence. So even though some of the misdemeanors are thefts and trespassings and things that are nuisance crimes, a lot of the people in jail on misdemeanors are there on very serious things that escalate things that end up in my court consistently, and we take those very seriously. I know that the Commissioner's Court takes it seriously also, because when I was a defense attorney, you listened to our input on the public defender plan, and you included a component that funded a public defender that people that have been arrested. It's probably happening right now. There's probably someone at the jail right now talking to people who don't have attorneys who are about to go in for a bond hearing, and that has increased the likelihood that they're going to get diverted to mental health. It has increased the number of PR bonds, and in fact, I agree with what Melinda said. Those people don't show up, and in fact, the Board of Judges had to meet back last summer and come up with a policy to ask the JPs who are setting the PR bonds to have those people call weekly and connect with them, and it's just not working. So by the time they get over here, we have to set a hearing. The person doesn't show up, we forfeit the bond, and now nobody's essentially looking for them. If there's a bonding company or people with their family and friends that have put up money for them, they're out actively looking for these folks. And the reason I was able to join you this morning is that, somebody who was on bond committed a new crime. He's set for a plea this morning, and shocker, he's not here. So I have couple of minutes to come address this for you. So, just know that we are working to move everything out of there. I wish I could do something about the 45 murders, but every time we set them, we find out that the mortician's office is set 15 other places because every other county is similar to Potter County. There's a lot of things that work here, but I don't think pretrial misdemeanors is necessarily the problem, and I don't think letting people out on a PR bond is necessarily the solution to whatever problem the felonies are. I will sing the praises of probation while I'm here. The CSRP bond program that Jason mentioned is a great program, and if you're interested in doing anything, I would say expand that because that's a great tool, and they're limited on the number of people they can supervise.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Judge Jones, do you have anything to add?
Good morning, how are you all this morning? The data should show that on misdemeanors, they're again PR bond, but the issue is not the personal bond, it's the mental health issue that we have in Potter County. We have mental health people who are, they're PR bonded out, and sometimes they're there 2 or 3 times a week. And so that will increase the numbers in the data as it relates to those who are returning. PR bond just for the sake of the issue with the jail. So we are working on trying our best to PR bond those out who are nonviolent misdemeanor offenders. So, but as it relates to felony offenders, we pretty much, there are no PR bonds on felony offenses. Due to, we don't have the information on the warrant. Lately, over the last, let's say, 18 months, do we set personal bonds on felony offenses? Me personally, I feel like that on those felony cases, they need to be dealt with on the district level. So those bonds are never set in terms of a personal bond.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'll echo the same thing. Of course, I work for Sheriff Thomas, and the misdemeanors have never been a problem. And so this is not for you, Judge, but I'm just saying, just a blanket statement. They've never been an issue. I mean, there have been misdemeanors that are in jail and stuff. I suspect that Harris County and probably Randall County, probably they have a higher amount of misdemeanors that are released or whatever. Maybe Harris County has like Randall County houses the city inmates, and so we don't house them in Potter County. And so that could be an issue why their numbers are higher. And then secondly, the DA's office, a lot of times will work with the county attorney's office, if they have a misdemeanor and a felony, and they'll go ahead and dismiss the misdemeanor, and if we try the felony, that happens periodically. Probably Jason can speak to that more effectively, but so that's some of the reasons why those numbers are dismissed or not accepted, I suspect, on the misdemeanors.
Anybody else need to say anything? Okay, thank you. There will be no action taken on this, but thank you both for being here. Appreciate it. 7D, Panhandle Auto Burglary Theft Unit 2, Senate Bill 22, calculated number 1. Oh, we did this last week.
We did that one, that's right, last meeting, this will be cut converter for FY 25 for Senate Bill 224. This, the award was an amount of $276,025.
Are you still doing the marking of the catalytic converters and doing all that for the?
We are, we're actually, next week we're ordering some equipment that actually marks it for us, big machine that actually instances the information, and we go on quicker, so we can process that quicker.
And you're gonna let the citizens know about it?
Yes.
It's kind of like shredding. This is the day to come get your catalytic converter marked out.
Yes. And we can combine those, and that's straight ahead.
Do what?
And we can combine this with the cabinet marking as well.
Any questions?
Second.
She was here a while ago, right? Oh, she was jury, okay. This
Move it as presented. Second.
have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed, same sign, passes 3-0. 7F, County Assistance District, CAD, to consider enacting and setting a minimum balance requirement for each participating department.
So this has come up before in your budget, and there was concern about not having enough money to cover maybe the contract for the radios that we're going to be contracting in the near future. And so just I don't know if it's 500,000 or if it's specific departments into CAD. It's already invested, a grant, it's already, we could need it if we needed it for a rainy day, like the radio project.
I thought the radio project was
Like a 5-year contract, and it's going to be expensive. And there was some, this we're going to go away, but why not have a little bit of money in this account?
Road and Bridge gets 30%, Sheriff's Office gets 20%, and radio replacement 10%.
So there's not probably enough money going into the radio replacement to cover that in this time frame. I'm not saying we gotta do it all in 1 year. It may take 2 or 3 years to get there, but I think we ought to be pre-planning to think about, maybe we ought to have a little money in that account as we move forward.
Richard, are you coming to the podium? All right.
The issue with the radio replacement started when the certificate after working through this for several years, I think you can look at, auditing department. Me and Brandon had several conversations about this, about the fact that you can't go in 1 year and replace every end user radio without issuing certificates of obligation or any plan put in place to do that. So part of this issue with the radios is it needs to be spaced out and done over time. You have multiple things to look at in the radio system, is in the fact that you have radio towers, you have rental fees for towers, you have generators to make sure they have power in inclement weather. Those still have to be serviced. There has to be end user contracts for repairs or replacements of radios and everything else. Most of this was never planned. So after the county owned all of these radios, we sat down and looked at that, and Judge Tanner and I had this conversation because we opted to put 10% of the CAD money towards that to be able to keep the county from having to take such a big hit every time we have to replace radios. I think of the 5 departments or agencies that use the radios off of this system, you know, we, as the fire department, we plan half of the purchase from the radio system, half of the purchase from our department, and we don't have the money to be able to do that after, you know, losing all the way down to 40% of the CAD. We no longer have the funds to be able to keep replacing everything on our own. So I think some of this needs to be a county recognition that we have a fairly large item there that is going to need regular replacement. Radios, end-user radios are becoming more like cell phones more and more every day. We have to program updates into them. We have to have batteries conditioned. We have to have all these things done to them. And as you know, with your cell phone, after a few years of updates, they send you that one. Replacing these end-user radios and trying to use the CAD to supplement it rather than trying to use the CAD to fund it. And look we all know that that fund balance can get spent, and neither department will have any say over what their part of that fund balance is spent on. So I think if you're going to create a fund balance, which I believe is a very prudent idea, it should be within each department's designation of their percentage. I don't think you ever want to spend all of your accounts down to zero. One of the things we've had to do with the fire department is we've had to budget pretty high because we have no idea what something is going to cost next year. That is one of the problems we've had. Since we bought fire apparatus in 2012, there's been 120. CAD was never set up to supplement personnel. The idea behind it was that we could fund equipment, buildings, all of the things that are necessary for the operation of the department, and not fund personnel except for a short term. And we're very well into this now, and that has become a hot button issue, is funding personnel out of the CAD. I don't know any other way to do it. I'm looking at it as in the fact that me, as a person who lives in the county, who is a taxpayer, who depends on the fire trucks that I purchase to save my house, respond to my family, which I have very many times, I think that that's very important that we provide that level of service as high as we can. Is it ever going to be perfect? No. But at the same time, we cannot expect to provide the level of service that we provide off the very minimum number of people. And doing it just with volunteers is not economically feasible anymore. You know, in 2020, just before the COVID crisis hit, we were looking at our call percentages, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, 41% of our call volume dropped. Those are calls that were unanswered, whether it's a medical call or a fire, somebody is not going at all. That is completely unacceptable in my line of work. And for that, I will keep standing here and telling you that we need to hire people. I don't care how we pay for them. We need to have people run these calls and provide this level of service to our community. I'm part of it.
Richard, I don't disagree with much of what you said, but we talked about this, I talked to Brandon about it, we're doing budget, and I think the county probably feels like it's, at least from the auditor's office point of view, feels like it's not a bad idea. To take money out of CAB and put employees, or pay for employees out of CAB was not my idea, and so I believe it was yours. And so, while I understand that the county has to pay for, figure out a way to employ people to run these fire trucks, it's expensive, and we want to provide the best service we can, so I thank you for what you've done to allocate that money for employees. I think it's been important. The sheriff's office has the same thing, but if you remember the budget process, you weren't here last week, but I put one person back in for both of you, and into the general fund, and for me, I say I didn't do it on my own, it's just my idea, but I think the court feels that same way, is that we need to try to take on more of these responsibilities through the budget process. The problem is there's several employees on that, and it's very difficult to do. The employees are make up about 60% of our budget. So employees are very expensive. That's why I usually say something, do we gotta have this people? Is this absolutely necessary? But I understand, I mean, I'm here because we run those stores. And I've even talked to you about that. We've got to get Bushland Fire Station manned, and it's just hard. You move people around, and you had some different ideas about how you might do it. Volunteer fire department to a county-funded fire department, but I'm not saying that it's not going that way, because I know that it is. I know they ask a person that's a volunteer to come up and go through all this training. You and I've talked about this. It's hard to get them to do it. They've got to take off work. It's a lot more than what it is. It's not just getting in the fire truck and driving the fire. There's a lot more to it than that, and there's a lot more responsibility. And so, if we can strike a balance there, I'm in the game with that as well. I still think that and this that I brought up to allocate money from CAD, it's not written in stone. I'm asking you and the sheriff and Donnie, let's talk about what we should add, and Brandon, what we should have in those accounts, so we don't spend it, don't overspend it, and so we can't pay for things if it becomes necessary. Again, it's just a conversation. If we want to make that decision today, I'm happy to vote on it today, but also I'm happy to pass it after some discussion to decide, hey, we'll do a percentage. We like the magic number is $500,000 or $1 million, and we'll get there in 5 years. I mean, it may be that way. I don't know.
I think that's extremely doable. There's no disagreement with that. It's the process. And I think if each department is able to set aside their own, I don't know, like the county has a contingency plan, like you set aside a contingency plan in there every year that was funded. And one of the things that, you know, the discussions go on outside of the commissioner's court about the CAD is the fact that, you know, when there's a big project, such as Road Bridge trying to remodel, we've tried to do a remodel, we built a station out of the CAD. And the only way you can do that is to let that fund balance build over a few years. fought for years just to hang on to our 40%. And I don't want to see our
You have some money.
Why don't we do this? Sorry to interrupt. Sometime in the next 2 weeks to talk about this, see if we can come back
That's fine. I'd like Brandon to be involved in this conversation just because the radio contract is very expensive. Just like I said, the cell phone situation, the radios are the same. They're just almost throwaway anymore. And you gotta have a radio. Absolutely gotta have a radio. You gotta have a fast gun, if you're a cop. You gotta have something.
and I think that's what the biggest deal is out of that is, you know, it wasn't meant for the CAD to fund it. Me and the judge stepped in and said, let's fund the maintenance and everything that we can out of the CAD. And I would rather have that 50% for my department, but we took 10% of our money and put it towards the radio fund just to allow for the servicing. And should an end user radio need to be, you know, immediately replaced or something.
Sure.
And now we're looking at it as a full replacement of the entire county. I think somewhere along the way, the general budget is going to have to take over on that radio replacement part of it. And how are we going to replace end user radios? I think that
Something's got to give. You understand the budget, and this year we remain flat. We're not going to have a tax increase, and actually the tax rate went down. And so, but when we need employees, and I'm not saying you don't, Richard, because you've got to answer these calls. You've already come through and said that, and I believe that's factual. I mean, I know stories too, just like you do. And so we've got to answer these calls. We've got to go if somebody's having a medical emergency. We've got to go if we've got a house on fire. We absolutely got to. You've got to figure that out.
Yeah, I think everybody that's working out of the CAD is trying to do that. And the thing is, you know, we're at that point now that end user radio replacement is going to become an issue. And personally, the conversations I had with Brandon was, if we need to spend that money down, then spend it down and get the radios now while we can, because next year they're going to be more expensive.
Well, how much is in the radio accounts? Those 10% goes in there. We may be already at that benchmark. I don't think we are, because I've talked to him, and we're going to be short about the overall cost of that contract and what we're going to need. But I'm not opposed to saying if we got enough in there and everybody's happy with it, the court, you, the sheriff, Donnie, it's just something I thought we should talk about.
No, I agree with you. The conversation needs to be had, and you're completely right. You don't want to spend down to nothing. And that's one of the things is we've looked at it every year as to if we don't spend all this money, what are we putting back? And that's when you'll see that this year there was a $3 million fund balance in there. And that's what we're doing every year is we're looking at that, trying to figure out how much can we leave in there for something that goes wrong. And that's one thing the fire department's always had, is we've always had to go straight to the county's contingency fund to try to replace stuff when catastrophe happened. Right. And here, the last time we had a catastrophe happen, we actually had a fund balance in our CAD that we were able to come in, purchase it straight away, and buy a demo truck off the line. It took us, you know, less than a year when we're looking at 3 years on a truck. So sure. I think some of that is the departments are already looking at how much fund balance are we going to leave, because one of the things I have to look at is we're taking salaries out of there, so I want to leave some of that money there. So if something does happen, if we get a bad month or a bad 6 months or whatever, we'll still have money in there to pay our people. That all has to be taken into consideration. I think the issue with the radio service is it's something that there was no plan for it, so trying to put that plan together after the fact is kind of what we're doing right now.
Well, the CAD can be spent on 5 things, a part which we don't have when we do the Bushland. Fire department, road and bridge, and radios, and the sheriff's office. So there is funding at least by legislators, set out that we can
There,
access those.
there are four things, it's police, fire, roads, and community development. And the reason the radios fit into that is because it's emergency services. So it does fit under both the fire, police, and the road and bridge aspect of that. So we do meet all four of those, and we do try to stay within all of those guidelines. You'll find there's a whole different set of rules for it as far as the CAD goes. It's a totally different account. It's not dissimilar from an ESD, but it is not an ESD. And that is something that we explored the whole gamut